Welcome back to Bible Talk Insight. Today we're starting a really vital conversation, maybe tackling one of the biggest dangers we face spiritually, spiritual amnesia. Our goal here is to explore how God, very intentionally, uses physical things, lasting reminders, we're calling them memorials of grace, to make sure we don't forget his faithfulness.
That's right.
And we're zoning in on this incredible moment in the Bible, the story of Israel crossing the Jordan River.
Yeah, and it's just so crucial we get the stakes here. Spiritual amnesia, it's not harmless. It's directly tied to spiritual decline and, well, ultimately disobedience.
Right.
When people stop remembering God's powerful acts, his promises, they just stop trusting him. It's, the difference between following God's plan and just trying to stumble through life on your own
Makes sense.
and ignoring those fundamental spiritual duties. It always brings serious problems, just like, forgetting a critical task in everyday life can lead to disaster. The minute we stop looking back at what God has done, we lose the faith we need to step into what he's promised to do.
That really sets the stage perfectly. So this story, the Jordan crossing into the Promised Land, it's like the ultimate blueprint for fighting that forgetfulness, isn't it?
Exactly.
It wasn't just about moving location. God was like installing this immediate, unforgettable memory anchor right then and there.
Welcome to Bible Talk Insight as we continue our daily study with Reel 1. Okay, so let's first define this problem that makes God do these, well, frankly, huge interventions. Spiritual amnesia. It's that built-in, really frustrating human thing where we forget God's past rescues, his promises, the second things get tough, or even when things get comfortable.
Right. It's like, think about the real-world consequences of forgetting something vital. It can be catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bible scholars point out that ignoring God's way or just actively forgetting his amazing works, it inevitably leads down a path to moral decay, even apostasy.
Once people or even whole nations forget how faithful God's been, think about the manna, the Red Sea parting, they start picking up habits, practices based on human ideas. And that always leads them away from God's protection, his purpose.
It feels so active when you put it like that. Not just, oops, slipped my mind.
No, it's more than that.
When we stop leaning on God's grace, we're basically saying, my own strength, my own smarts are enough. We're swapping divine power for human effort.
Yeah.
It's almost like declaring we can handle it without the one who just performed yesterday's miracle. It's kind of like warring against his plan, putting ourselves in charge instead of him.
That's it. That tendency to fall back on human solutions, that's the core battle, isn't it?
It really is.
And that reliance on our own limited resources instead of, infinite divine power, that's exactly what God has to deal with, to dismantle before he can take the next step in his plan for his people. The whole journey in the wilderness was kind of designed to crush that self-reliance.
Join us tomorrow for Reel 2. We'll be looking at why God asked for such intense preparation before he performed this amazing miracle at the Jordan. Okay, so the scene at the Jordan River, it's just full of this impending divine drama, right?
Absolutely. You can feel the tension.
But before the miracle happens, before that rushing river just stops, Joshua tells the people, sanctify yourselves, consecrate yourselves. Now, that demand for purification, it seems like a lot to ask right when they should be, maybe focusing on the very real danger of this raging river in front of them. Why did God insist on that kind of intense preparation?
Well, it was absolutely necessary because this crossing wasn't just about logistics getting from point A to point B. It was fundamentally a covenant renewal. So this consecration, it meant laying aside sin, confessing, removing any ritual impurities. And this process wasn't just random. It actually mirrored the really solemn preparations the priests did before serving in the sanctuary.
Right, like before holy duties.
Exactly. And it also mirrored the purification the whole community did before they received God's law at Mount Sinai. God was basically saying, look, you're about to step into my presence in a new, powerful way. You need to be ready for it.
And right at the center of all this preparation was the Ark of the Testimony, carried by the priests.
Yeah.
We really need to remember what the Ark was.
Crucial point.
It was the absolute symbol of God's presence, like his throne right there among the people. Inside it were the tablets of the law, Aaron's rod that had budded, and that jar of manna.
Which is just profound when you think about it. The ark was going first into the water.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a box. It represented the covenant itself. That's the law, God's authority, and chosen leadership, the rod, and his constant provision, the manna.
Wow. All symbolized right there.
So when those priests carried that ark into the raging river, well, that was a huge test of faith, of allegiance. God demanded this intense, very public preparation precisely to confirm their trust in him as their commander. before he'd fight for them and part the waters.
So they had to show their commitment first.
They had to be clean, committed, ready to follow his lead before he performed the impossible. It really confirmed that their victory was going to come from his sacred promise, not, their own strength or military skill.
So the preparation itself was actually part of the cure for that spiritual amnesia we talked about.
Yes.
It forced them to remember and recommit before the next big miracle. Tomorrow, on Reel 3, we're going to unpack the really profound difference between our flawed human memory and God's powerful memory. For bonus content, check out Answers from Scripture, and don't forget to subscribe to Bible Talk Insight wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome to Bible Talk Insight as we continue our daily study with Reel 3. Okay, it's pretty clear, isn't it? We as humans, we're just constantly forgetting. We mess up, we fall into these cycles of doubt.
Constantly.
And we need God's seemingly endless patience because our memory is just, it's flawed. It's prone to error. We remember hurts maybe, but forget the blessings.
And that human weakness provides this incredibly powerful contrast with God, because when the Bible talks about God remembering, it's never like us trying to remember where we put our keys. It's not passive recall.
Okay, so what is it then?
When God remembers, it's always an active, powerful, intervening act. Think about it. When God remembered Noah.
He sent the wind.
Right. He sent the wind to dry the earth. When he remembered Hannah's prayer.
He gave her his son.
Exactly. It's remembering that leads directly to salvation, to action. It changes things.
And this specific saving act of the Jordan crossing, it had this explicit purpose spelled out right there in the text, didn't it? It went way beyond just getting Israel's feet dry.
Oh, absolutely. It was a global demonstration. It was designed to create this irreversible memory, not just for Israel, but for everyone. God dried up that river so that, and this is the text, all the peoples of the earth may know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. See, the focus is outward too.
Right, the surrounding nations were supposed to see this and understand the power of Israel's God.
It was a testimony set in stone, or maybe better, set in water that suddenly wasn't there anymore. It perfectly illustrates this key principle you see in the Bible. Our necessity is always God's opportunity.
That's such an encouraging thought, isn't it? Because when we face something that looks overwhelming from, a raging river in our lives and an impossible situation, we feel desperate.
Of course.
But you're saying that exact moment, our deepest need, that's the trigger for God to step in if we approach it with faith.
Precisely. The response God looks for is living faith, not caving into fear. And when that faith is there, the Bible assures us the powers of heaven come to help. And those obstacles, they will disappear, just like the Jordan's waters did. God really shows his strength best when our strength is completely gone.
Don't miss Reel 4. We'll be breaking down the meaning of those stones from the Jordan as a powerful spiritual sign. And
Welcome to Bible Talk Insight as we continue our daily study with Reel 4. So, after this incredible miracle, the crossing itself, Joshua commands them to take 12 stones, one for each tribe, right? From the middle of the riverbed.
That's right, from where the priest's feet stood firm.
And set them up as a monument over in Gilgal. Now, why stones? Just common stones. Why build this pile? Why not just, write it down, date it, and move on?
Well, these stones were far more than just a pile of rocks. They were specifically designated as a profound sign. The Hebrew word used there is ot.
Ot.
And it means something that acts as an outward symbol or representation of a much deeper spiritual reality. It's like a connection point between what you can see and what you can't see.
So what reality were these stones pointing to? They represented God's presence right there with them. The miracle of the crossing itself, and the enduring covenant he had made with Israel. It was all wrapped up in those stones.
And we see this idea, this sign, used elsewhere in the Bible for other really big divine memorials, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. It always seems connected to these huge moments of covenant or incredible revelation.
Like what?
Well, think about the rainbow after the flood.
Wow.
That was the the sign of God's promise never to destroy the earth by water again.
Okay. Yep.
Or consider the observance of the Sabbath. Bible scholars identify that as an between God and his people, signifying his creative power, his sanctifying work. These aren't just little reminders, they're like anchors holding down fundamental truths.
And the Jordan stones, they needed to be durable, you said.
Yes. Olam is the idea meant to last perpetually, forever, and specifically designed to provoke meaningful, faith-filled responses from the generations to come.
So the permanence, the solidness of the stone, that's key.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just about celebrating the moment back then. It was about making sure the spiritual truth of that moment was basically etched into the collective memory for good. It's about fighting that spiritual amnesia we keep talking about with something tangible, something lasting. It forces you to pause and remember.
Exactly. Durability is the whole point. Human memory, as we know, fades. But the stones, they remain. They stand as the silent testimony across the centuries, a visible, unmoving witness to God's active, saving memory.
Welcome to Bible Talk Insight as we conclude our daily study with Reel 5. One of the most beautiful parts of this whole memorial thing, and clearly very intentional, is that it was specifically designed to make kids curious.
Yes, built-in pedagogy.
Right. Joshua straight up says the stones were set up so that when the children would inevitably ask their fathers, "Hey, Dad, what are these stones?" the parents would have this amazing story ready to tell. It's like memory by design.
It really is the Bible's own blueprint for intergenerational worship and passing on the testimony. Those stones were the physical trigger for an oral tradition of faith.
And the parents had specific instructions on how to answer.
Yes. The required response was clear. They had to tell the story of the miracle, saying, Israel crossed over this Jordan on dry land. And crucially, the testimony immediately links the new miracle, the Jordan crossing, to the older foundational miracle that many in this new generation had only heard about, the Red Sea crossing.
That connection is fascinating. So it bridges the experience of two totally different generations.
Exactly. The generation that came out of Egypt and the one born in the wilderness now entering the land.
It's like telling the kids, look, the God who saved your grandparents in that incredible way, he's the same God who just saved us, your parents, right here.
Yeah.
And he's still here today.
Precisely. And that practice creates these absolutely essential moments for the younger generation to really take ownership of their spiritual history, to discover God's faithfulness not just as history, but as a living God, not some relic from the past.
Yeah, not just stories in a book.
By demanding that parents testify about the miracle, God makes sure the story of his power is kept alive and actively passed on. It turns faith into this continuous living inheritance, not something that just fades away.
It makes worship a family story, doesn't it? All centered around God's saving actions.
Yes.
And the goal isn't just remember the past, but seeing that same power is available right now for the future.
And that memory, passed faithfully from parent to child, ensures the whole community understands deep down that every single victory they will ever experience is rooted entirely in God's grace, not in their own strength or smarts or military plans.
Wow. What a powerful journey exploring why God uses these memorials. The core mission, it seems, stays simple. The whole point of these reminders, physical and verbal, is to keep our hearts constantly turned towards the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Just like God made a way for Israel to cross the Jordan and fight that spiritual forgetfulness, he's made provision for us too. We have to keep striving for that perfection of Christian character, which Bible scholars tell us is possible, but only through focusing on Christ's power and his promises.
And maybe if we take that idea forward into our own lives today, the final thought to really wrestle with is this. We ourselves are called to be signs in the world.
Like the stones.
Exactly like those enduring stones pulled from the Jordan. Our whole lives should act as a testimony, reflecting Christ's character, his goodness so clearly, so profoundly, that other people are almost compelled to look at us and ask, what? What is that? What are these lives about? Where do they get that strength, that peace?
And our answer.
Their answer has to point straight to Jesus.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? To be a living memorial.